Well, the House of Commons is going to remain empty for the next 2.5 months while Parliament is prorogued. Until March 24th, members of Parliament do not sit. No new bills can be introduced. And all pending legislation, well, that's terminated. This is raising questions on what will the pause mean for Canada's response to a potential 25% tariff from the United States. For more, we are joined by Nelson Wiseman this morning, Professor Emeritus of Political Science at the University of Toronto. Good to speak to you, Mr. Wiseman. And I'm looking at this shot of the House of Commons, and this is pretty much what it's going to look like till the end of March. Nobody inside. Let's talk about prorogation. Does the government need Parliament in session to retaliate against these tariff threats from the U.S.?
No, it doesn't. Actually, the government is still in place. Also, these are threats. Let's see what Trump actually does. Before we react, let's see what the action is. The last time Trump came into power, he talked a lot about tariffs across the board. In effect, we just got them on aluminum and steel, and I don't think they lasted even a year. So similarly, we are not going to have across-the-board tariffs for the excellent analysis that Stephen just presented, but we will have challenges. I think people take Trump too seriously. He's essentially a clown. He wants to dominate the news cycle. So he throws out stories like this, and he loves the fact that this is preoccupying Canadians and they're pulling their hair out. One example was, a few weeks ago, the big issue for him was the Canadian border, as if there's a lot of fentanyl going across it. In fact, the problem is all the guns coming into Canada. And what did Canada do? It responded by saying, oh, we're going to spend $1.3 billion on tightening the border. What a waste of money. The border is secure. It's the Americans' responsibility to handle things coming into the United States. So what I'm saying is that, of course, you got to listen to Trump.
Yeah.
It's entertaining, but don't take everything he says at face value. He said all kinds of things. He said when NAFTA was last renegotiated, it was such a good deal that, in effect, Mexico was paying for the wall. That didn't happen. Now, can I say something about prorogation?
Yes, please.
The assumption you're making is that Parliament's coming back on the 24th of March. We assumed Parliament was coming back on the 27th of January until a few days ago.
Are you saying
there's a potential scenario where the new Prime Minister could actually ask the Governor General to extend the prorogation because he or she will need more time to formulate a program, to revamp the cabinet, and to write a speech from the throne, because it will be a new government. But right now we have a government in place. And beyond the politicians, let's remember, one thing that hasn't changed is our deep state. In other words, the civil service is in place. And they are now gaming out all kinds of scenarios about what Trump could do and how we might react.
Well, Nelson, you bring up a really good point. And, people have talked about how the Liberals are really smart strategists. So perhaps now you've given us another thing to worry about. But I want to get into what you said, first of all, in your first answer, which is that we don't need Parliament sitting in order to work through trade negotiations. So explain that more to us. Is it just that the government in power is able to unilaterally make those decisions with the United States? Like, who is Washington calling? And then how are decisions getting made? And do you not need, essentially, can this minority government operate unilaterally if Parliament isn't sitting and make trade agreements and concessions with the United States?
Parliament would be needed if we had a treaty that had to be ratified. But otherwise, executive power is there. What happened last time? Was Parliament sitting through all the time that NAFTA was being renegotiated? I don't recall, but I don't think so. It's not essential. Canada's made all kinds of trade deals that the government makes, and then they get approved or ratified by Parliament. But you don't have to have Parliament meeting right now. A lot of people, in fact, most people don't even notice if Parliament's meeting or not meeting. What they do notice is what the government's doing, what the Prime Minister is saying, what the Minister of Finance does, Parliament will meet for things like the budget. It will have to meet at a certain point to vote what's called supply for the government, funding the operations of the government. But even if there's a crisis, Parliament, it can be in recess, prorogued for a very long time, and the government relies on funding by something called Governor General's warrants. These are authorization from the Governor General, but we needn't get into those weeds. We're not going to be there.
I always appreciate your expertise, and it is great to be able to ask you these questions. They're the questions Canadians have. How are things going to work? You've provided some clarity for us. Nelson Wiseman, Professor Emeritus of Political Science at the University of Toronto. Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you liked that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.